Looking for a product that's firefighter proof? Be sure to check out Supervac's latest torture test, a recent extreme water test that pitted Rosenbauer's electric fire apparatus against one of Supervac's battery fans. Want to see how this American-made fan held up? Visit bit.ly/water-torture-test to watch the video. The Fire Store, equipping protectors with passion. Every decision the Fire Store makes as a company is about you, the customer. The Fire Store wouldn't be where it is today without you, and the company doesn't take that lightly. It understands that having the right gear can mean the difference between life and death. The Fire Store's goal is to get you the gear you need, when you need it, at prices you can afford. Visit thefirestore.com for everything but the truck and shop a family of brands that include Streamlight, MSA, Lion, FLIR, and more. Hi, Chris Mc Loone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. It's the end of October. It's my podcast of the month here to just kind of share some thoughts with you about things that I've experienced this month or noticed this month as they relate to apparatus and equipment, fire apparatus and equipment. I'm not going to do this every month, as I've said before. I'm pretty sure you're probably going to get tired of hearing from me at some point. So I did want to discuss a few things that have occurred actually at the end of September and the beginning of October. Before I get into those things, though, however, I would like to talk to you a little bit about NFPA 1900. It's coming January 1st, 2024. It officially goes into effect. You can specify fire apparatus according to 1900 now if you wish. NFPA 1900 will be replacing standards we know of like NFPA 1901, the standard for automotive fire apparatus, NFPA 1906, standard for wildland fire apparatus, also the ARF apparatus, ARF and industrial apparatus standard, the ambulance standard. All these standards are being rolled into one. It's a more than 300-page book now, so get ready to lug that around. But it is going to be taking effect in January. This month we had a podcast with Bill Peters, our editorial advisory board member, retired battalion chief with the Jersey City, New Jersey Fire Department, and Ed Rice, who is a deputy chief with the DCFD. Both of them were members of the committee that worked to generate this new standard. So we talked a bit about what some of the major differences are, besides now that you have all these standards in one. What some of the changes are, some of the more noticeable ones. They include chevron striping. You can pick the colors now. Let's see. One of the other ones was the required equipment. That has changed. Don't want to give too much of it away, but it is in our podcast page for the month, fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcasts. You can find it there. Also, you can find it on a variety of streaming services like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. So again, January 1st, 2024 is coming. Also, with regard to that was only part one. We are going to have a part two. A big part of the second part of that is going to be your questions. We're going to answer as many questions as we can. So please, if you watch the first one and you have questions, or you just know that it's coming and you have questions, please let us know. Chris.McLoone, that's MCLOONE, at Clarion Events, CLARION, events.com. Chris.McLoone at clarionevents.com. Send them in. I'll get them sent out to Bill and Ed. If neither of them can answer it, we will send it out to other people in the committee, and we'll get those questions answered for you. So again, NFPA 1900, it's coming. You want to find out as much as you can about it because it will change slightly the way you specify your new rigs. It will slightly change perhaps the cost of those new rigs. One of the things is that you don't have to buy new ground ladders with the purchase. So those types of things are what we discuss. Now, October. Two different events, one at the end of September and one at the beginning of October that I attended this year. One was the FEMA annual meeting. The other was the Spartan Fire Truck Training Conference that took place in Lansing, Michigan at the beginning of the month. First, let's talk about FEMA. First of all, whenever I attend that, and this was the first one I had been to in a few years, I love going. I love going for a variety of reasons. It really gives me, FEMA is the Fire Apparatus Manufacturers Association, and FEMSA covers the loose equipment that we cover on our apparatus. It's made up, both organizations are made up of our industry suppliers. And what this gives me an opportunity to do is to, see old friends. It's always great talking to people. You know, you see a lot of people at trade shows during the year, but they're busy. They're looking to talk to their customers. Hard to have a conversation. This is a more confined, I guess, environment where we can all get a chance to talk. We're all sitting in the big room areas. There are hospitality suites. We're going out to dinner. So a lot of opportunities to catch up with old friends and to make some new ones. I got a chance to sit with some people who I never really had a chance to get to know before, and I got to know them this year. So it's really been great. It also gives me an opportunity to see some of the challenges that our suppliers are up against. It's very easy for us as the end users, as the purchasers, to become frustrated at times, particularly right now with the environment we're in, with supply chain challenges, lead times out there. So it's really important for me to go there so that I get a feel for what the challenges on their end. It's not something where, you know, they're just coming up with 36-month lead times just because. It's because, you know, they are up against some things as well. So it does give me an opportunity to meet up with them and talk about that. One of the things that came up repeatedly during this event was technology. We spent a lot of time talking about technology. There were two different breakouts that I attended that were about technology. And a lot of the discussion revolved around the speed at which the fire service adapts or adopts technology as it comes out. There were certainly some who reiterated the idea that firefighters don't like change. That they resist change. And, you know, I always hesitate to say that is something that is across the fire service, that it's fire service wide. None of us like change. Well, I don't think that just as in our daily lives that don't have to do with the fire service or the fire department or the fire company, I don't think any of us truly enjoy change all the time. Some do look forward to it. My former chief, he loves change. He can't wait. He has no problem saying goodbye there's no nostalgia with him. I don't feel no sentimentality. It's funny. I've spoken many times about our American LaFrance that, you know, I'm in love with. 1981 LaFrance, love driving it, love riding it. He rode that truck many times. When I joined the fire company, he was deputy chief. And I can't tell you how many calls I went to that he commanded from that truck. But when it came back a couple of years ago, and we were using it to transport staffing to fires, that was all we were doing with it. It was non-emergency, just a kind of a staffing transport. When we were waiting for our two new pumpers to arrive, he was like, yeah, he rode it. I think he rode in it maybe once or twice, but there was no like, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I missed this. You know, it's taken me back to other times. No, he was fine. Yeah, we've held on to it, and I think that he recognizes the importance of holding on to it. But I think if it went back to the museum tomorrow, he would be fine. He's always looking to move forward. He was a very progressive chief, and he was always looking to move forward, really not looking back. Change is something that he embraced. He was always anxious to see what was coming down the pike. But I think that for the most part, most people are not into or don't always deal well with a major change. So I don't think that's just a fire service thing where firefighters are not, are resistant to change. I think that over time, when a piece of technology has arrived that we see right away, right off the bat, that we can use, and we can use it to do our jobs more efficiently and safely, I think we jump right on board every time. A lot of times, though, it is a cost thing. We need to wait. We need to wait for those costs to come down. Whenever we talk about technology, there's also an implementation thing as well. Very eloquent there, but there's also an implementation factor. There are lots of technologies available to us that some of which are definitely computer-based, tablet-based, PC-based, laptop-based, and some of them are really, really good. And you immediately can see how it would help us do our job more efficiently. There's a lot of accountability software out there, a lot of accountability apps out there that we can use immediately. The thing is, not every fire department is set up to implement a particular technology. For example, some of them you really have to. The incident commander's doing his or her thing. You really need someone. Maybe it's a safety officer. Maybe it's a company officer. Maybe it's another staff officer. You really need someone there monitoring that for the incident commander. And that's where I think there are some stumbling blocks to implementation of some of these things. So it's not always a factor of that's not that I don't want to do it. We've always done it this way. It's not always that kind of thing. A lot of times it's just, man, I'd love to use that. I just, we're not set up for it. So keep those kinds of things in mind. We talked a lot about it. There were, and we're going to continue to talk about it because, certainly, once something takes off, it takes off. Thermal imaging cameras is always a good example. But I'll tell you what, for the companies that are out there that are creating these things, and maybe they're a little slow to adopt, let us see them. Let us, and I know there are many times that we do. We saw this with Boston with an accountability and tracking system a number of years ago. They really put it through its paces. When you give a group of firefighters something like that to play with, to put through the paces, we're gonna tell you what needs to be done to make it more robust, to make it more usable for us. Fire service, we are innovators all the time. Every single call we go on, we're innovating something almost. You can't just take something that's built for somebody else and plop it down in front of us and say, okay, here you go. This is awesome. It really does need to go put through its paces, and it needs to have firefighter input on it. So that's a bit about technology. We talked a lot about it. Pick the one that is right for you. I think that's really the message, no matter what it is. We talk about electric fire vehicles. They are not going to be right for every single fire company. Pick the technology that is right for you. Pick the technology that works for your department, and you're not going to go wrong. But train on it. You have to make sure you train on it. But again, a lot of stuff out there. I love watching it. This year, FTIC 2023. I've said it many times. I never saw technology making its way into so many different things, whether it be there were, for lack of a better term, smart hydraulic rescue tools that when you pulled back into the firehouse, it was these tools were sending information out so that one example was a blade. A blade may have twisted a little bit. It's the machine itself is recording that, transmitting it somewhere else, and actually coming up with a lot of predictive, not only preventive, but predictive maintenance items to keep those tools in service as much as possible. So again, technology, it is necessary to evaluate it and figure out what is best for you. Implement or adoption, yes, it can be slower across the fire service, but I don't think it's just because it's not the way we always did it. I really think that in many occasions it's this is awesome. How am I going to integrate this into my operations? How am I going to implement this to help my crews do things more efficiently? It's going to happen. Things do eventually things do eventually take off, but it just takes that time. Cost and implementation are two of the major factors, I believe, well beyond this is the way we've always done it. So that was Fama Femza, and that was really one of the big thing that I took away from that. A lot of talk about technology. The second trip I took this month, this was actually in October, was to the Spartan Fire Truck Training Conference. It took place in Lansing, Michigan. The last one I went to was 2019. It was celebrating its 25th year. I got a chance to sit down with Bill Foster, one of the founders of Spartan. And when you get a chance to sit down with an industry mainstay who's kind of seen it all from his perspective, you sit down and you speak with them. And we ended up writing up something back then, but it was great. It was great sitting down, talking to Bill. Unfortunately, Bill this time around had some health issues and he couldn't make it, but this was his baby. This fire truck training conference, this was his thing. And he recognized very, very early on that, speaking of the different technologies and the different ways trucks were being designed, the engines, the way they were getting smarter and smarter, he recognized very early on that we needed to have some sort of event that would cater to the technician, that would talk to the technician, talk about their issues, what they're seeing, and bring them up to speed on all the new diagnostics. We talk about telematics, all those types of things that impact vehicle technicians. This year, much like all the years, it was also an opportunity for EVTs to get recertified, or for budding EVTs to take their tests to work toward certification. Really a great conference if you ever get a chance. It was the first time I had ever been out to the Spartan chassis plant, so getting a chance to see really we got a chance to see from the raw materials on up to where these chassis were then shipped out to wherever they were going to go, whether it be Smeal, whether it be the Brandon, South Dakota facility for Spartan Emergency Response, wherever they are. It's always a great tour. But the best part of this for me is listening. Whether it's at the meals, whether it's at the classes, or whether it was during those tours, just listening to people, listening to the technicians, listening to them bond with each other over repairs, as well as listening to them coach each other along. Oh yeah, I had that happen once. Here's what I did. It really, this is a very unique community. And these guys are not necessarily all firefighters, but they work on the trucks and keep the trucks that we ride in service. The out of service time, they work very hard to keep that out of service time to a minimum. So just listening to the guys and the men and women as we were navigating through a lot of the different classes. There are a number of different types of classes. They really worked this year to bring as many hands-on classes as possible. We get to talk about the axles, braking systems, pumps, Allison transmissions, all these things. But then we got down to the component level. They were taking apart and repairing intake valves. We learned about how to repair, how to replace some of the roll-up doors, some of the common repairs that need to be made to these, some of the common complaints that the manufacturers of these products will hear. Some seating. We sat down and we had a class with a couple of representatives, each from a different seating manufacturer, and they talked about, yes, they discussed their own products and the systems that are involved with them, but they also talked about common repairs that need to be made across the board. And that was one of the classes where one of the instructors, after hearing a repair process from one of the attendees, talked about that. That's a good tip. That's a good tip. You should share that with other people. It had to do with how he replaces the airbags in a seat with air ride. He has a whole template that he has. It's made out of wood. To hold the seat up while he makes the repair he has to make. It was just little things like that everybody can take. It's no different to me than listening at FDIC. When you go to some of the hot classes and you hear You learn something from every single class you go to, no matter how many times you go to the class, because there's always a new tip or a new trick. And this was no different. But I did compile a few things, sort of my top 5 lessons learned. I posted it online, but I wanted to go over it here too, because I think that they're important when we're talking about technicians and repairs. And this is just, having sat through the classes, some of the classes, and just listening to the technicians. The first one is know where to find your model and serial numbers on your fire apparatus components. I know that's kind of a duh, but they really did mention this over and over and over again. When you call them, you have to have that serial number or that model number available so they know how to coach you through whatever repair you need to make. That being said, we know there are often labels. Those labels wear off. We may know where to find them, but we can't read the label anymore. That is where, and the second tip, the second lesson learned, this is where your cell phone with a camera is your best friend. Because 9 times out of 10, they can identify through a picture what seat model you have, what intake valve model you have, what roll-up door, whatever it is. They can identify that, and they can walk you through based on what that picture says. Vendors will learn as much from technicians as much as the technicians learn from the vendors, especially at an event like this. But that seating repair is a really, really good example. The vendor had not heard of doing that before. I mean, they can walk you through a lot of the finer points of making the repair. But this particular thing with the wood, what they would do is they would let all the air out of the system, which brings the seat down. They remove the seat from the truck, and then they would lift it and put the piece of wood underneath, which allowed them to do the work to replace the airbag. And it just wasn't something that the vendor had heard before. It's probably not something, I'm going to guess that as you're walking through this, they're going to, the vendor's going to say, okay, you got to make sure, let all the air out of the system, but you're going to have to make sure you prop the seat up somehow to do this. Or they may have decided when you take it out to lay the seat on its side and pull it out that way. This is just what this particular individual has found has made him more efficient, and he shared it with the group. And the vendor was like, "Wow, that's a pretty good tip. That's a pretty good tip. You ought to share that." So, vendors learn from the technicians as much as technicians learn from the vendors. This next one is more of a, you don't want to be the person or the crew that creates a situation where the technician tells the chief, that crew, I don't know what they're doing. This truck keeps coming back over and over and over again for the same thing. We're repairing this all the time. That crew, I don't know what they're doing, but that crew is messing this up somehow. You don't want to be that crew. Keep your technician in the back of your mind when you're working off the truck. Be careful. Don't be causing the same repairs over and over and over again. Sometimes they can determine that maybe it's the component itself that's causing the problem. But, in this particular example, the person was saying, like, I am doing this over and over, month after month. That crew, I don't know what they're doing. Don't be that crew, and don't be the person on that crew that's causing the issue. And finally, number 5, and I think this is common everywhere. If you've had a challenge with a component, someone else has had that exact same challenge and has a solution for it. I can't tell you how many times just listening in the beginning of classes, or again at the meals, just listening to these folks talk to each other about the different challenges that they've had moving around and doing things where it's the same thing, and somebody's like, yes, I've been down that road, and here's how I fixed it. And here's what I do every time I have it. It's really, it really is. I can't tell you how many times I heard that, while I was there. It really is an interesting time. And like I said, it does mirror FDIC very much, where, you put a bunch of firefighters in the room. They start talking before it's begun. They start talking about the topic at hand, and then they start talking about experiences that they've had and the different, it's the kitchen table. Only in this case, maybe it's the shop table. So So that's that. So those were the couple of things I really wanted to talk to you about this month: technology, and then the technician end of these things. It really was able to get a lot out of those 2 trips. Got some more coming up. This technology thing is not going to change. There is a lot out there that, and we've only scratched the surface of what is available. And it doesn't only have to be, really technically involved things. I mean, robots right now are becoming very, very pervasive in specific areas, whether they're tracked robots or whether they are trackless robots, like the Boston Dynamics Spot. It's a 4-legged robot that can do a lot of things. The FDNY is using them. And we actually have an article on that in our December issue regarding those things. So just looking ahead, as I said, this is the end of October, but we're already actually working on the December issue. And our December issue has traditionally had an outlook to kind of take a look at the upcoming year and see where we're at. These past few years have been topsy-turvy, and I'm not saying that 2024 is finally going to plateau or to smooth out. We're hoping that it is, but make sure when that issue hits the streets, or when it hits the website, that you go and take a look at that. The news is not bad. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here. The news is not bad. I'll say this, the one thing that I walked away with, although there are a number of different points that'll be in the article, is that the supply chain issues, the supply chain seems to be normalizing again. The problems have lessened to a degree, which has allowed, in this case, apparatus manufacturers, it's helped them out, and things are not. I'm not saying that the 36-month lag times are going to go, but things are starting to turn back around again. Not everything is without its challenges. 2024, I'm sure, will be we'll have challenges. There are some that nobody saw coming. That through the years since the pandemic year 2020. There have been some things that my fire company, I write about it in the article. We were impacted by it. We weren't in the thick of it. We took delivery of 2 pumpers, I think, right before the supply chain issues really became problems. So anyway, that's one item in that article. Take a look at it when it comes out. We're already working on December. Gosh, we're already looking. In November, I'll be working on January. So if you have any topics you would like us to cover on these podcasts, please let me know. Again, chris.mcloone@clarionevents.com. Via all of our different, via all the arms that we have out there, we have an expert. Where whatever you are looking for that's apparatus and equipment related, let us know. We'll find the expert who can come on here and talk about that topic at length. So again, this has been Chris Mc Loone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Don't forget NFPA 1900. We're looking for your questions. We're going to be doing that second part in December. So I'm going to be recording that in November at some point. So get those questions in. Let us know what you want. Let us know what you want to know about the new standard. It's not super complicated, the changes, but they're things you're going to want to know about. So again, NFPA 1900. Let us know what your questions are. chris.mcloone@clarionevents.com is where you can send your questions. Again, this has been Chris Mc Loone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Have a good one and stay safe.